Hello guys and welcome to the status report highlight for the 30th of June 2015. And today we have some more new information on the renderer, which I know all of you have been looking forward to, so let's get started. While development keeps moving along as usual, a lot of you have patiently been waiting for info on the new renderer. And for this week's status report, lead producer Brian Hicks touches upon that very subject. Also, senior designer Jan Tomasic gives us some input on the in-game field of view, the theory and thought process behind the design solutions, as well as decisions for the current iteration of field of view. So let's start off with lead producer Brian Hicks and what he has to say about the new renderer. Players who have been actively following the development of DayZ are aware of the large task the engine team undertook to separate the legacy RV renderer from the simulation and replace it with a more modular and updated version. The task itself of creating a new renderer is not huge. The length and weight of the task is related primarily to separating the legacy renderer from the simulation, ensuring the separation is complete, as the RV engine and its functions tied to it are extensive. Once the above was complete, the new renderer itself was broken into 3 primary modules. Bear with us, this can be moderately technical. Module 1 is the pipeline module. The pipeline of objects rendering is new, defines the way how the objects are moving from entity in world to set of rendering commands. Is responsible to prepare meshes to be rendered, is multi-threaded. Filling of pipeline will be also multi-threaded in phase of testing and debugging. Material system module is module 2. Objects are rendered using new material system. Old one is still present to have the comparison. Each mesh has assigned a material, not RV mat, with material class which is responsible for its rendering. Setting of material is editable in Workbench Editor, and you see real-time the changes in render. Each material class was written from scratch. Visualization currently is similar as possible to old render, but now we can add simply new features. Huge simplification for filling GPU command buffers can be easily sorted to minimize changes in command buffers. All renderable game objects have now representation in material class. And module 3 is high-level rendering API module. GPU API is DirectX 11 for now, with DirectX 12 support coming later. Implementation of GPU API now hidden behind rendering API. No one is allowed to use direct GPU API commands. It allows us to add new GPU API like DirectX 12, Xbox One and PS4 much easier. Initial implementation is done, currently in testing and bug fixing phase. Optimization still in progress, but looks promising. In addition, GUI Manager, GUI pipeline and rendering system is completely new and different from the one in original RV engine. GUI layouts will be defined in Workbench using Graphic Editor, not by config system, which is a huge improvement for designers. Rendering works, currently debugging and working on the editor. In a future experimental build it will be possible to try it using a command line switch or a startup switch. On other notes, post processes were completely rewritten into the new system of effects. More worlds can be rendered in one frame. It allows to create independent scenes, which is needed for Workbench. Usable also in-game to create, for example, mirrors and cameras. As work on the new renderer continues and we look at our plans for the eventual push to experimental, we have several goals. Testing partnerships with Intel, AMD and Nvidia to ensure compatibility with market leader and average hardware configurations. Marked performance for gameplay in large cities, like Electro, Cherno, Novod, Severograd, Berezino, etc. So as a side note from me on the new renderer, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think this will be a big difference in gameplay altogether. Obviously we know it's not going to bring a massive improvement to FPS initially, but it will over time become more and more optimized and give us a better gameplay experience overall. Tied in with all the other elements and features to make it the most immersive survival gameplay experience we could wish for. Next up we have senior designer Jan Tomasic. Since there's been some discussion regarding changes in the character zoom mechanic, Jan decided to jump in and explain what we are trying to achieve. We should probably start by asking the question, why have a character's eye zoom in the first place? It's the old problem with emulating a 3D world in insufficient hardware. The human field of vision is around 190 degrees, and the area where vision cones of both eyes overlap is around 100 degrees. Unfortunately, most of today's monitors viewed from a regular distance usually tend to cover only 45 degrees of human field of view in real life. This means that if you want a target on screen to appear in real life size, you are only able to display around half of what you would see in reality, or stereoscopically. And so as a designer you have to choose. Should I display objects in the distance properly, but sacrifice the overall vision, or set the field of view to 100 degrees, but deform the whole picture? The trick of armor is actually not to choose, and instead introduce an eye zoom instead. This way you can keep the surrounding awareness by setting the default field of view to 100 degrees, but when necessary to perceive a depth of field properly occurs, i.e. you are shooting, you can zoom in to 45 degrees. But is it okay to force fixed field of view on players? We thought not. Not only because 100 degrees field of view does not feel right to everyone, but some players can't even physically play with it. Motion sickness, performance of PC, different monitor setups, etc. So the field of view slider was introduced, and with it, multiple problems we are ironing out now. The most important step was to even out players by moving fixed field of view to iron sights. This way you can most of the time play with whatever field of view you like, but when the field of view becomes a matter of life or death, in shootouts, it is set the same for everyone to keep the game fair. We know that zoomed field of view or iron sights must be 45 degrees, because it emulates the eye, and we stated earlier that 45 degrees is realistic. But what should the unzoomed field of view be? It can't be higher than a number the player can set through field of view slider. This way, going into iron sights actually shows the unzoomed picture, which is definitely not something you would desire. So the field of view of iron sights should be also the smallest field of view we allow players to set by the field of view slider. We decided to set the range of field of view slider from 60 degrees to 90 degrees. And here we have a couple of pictures from the status report. The first two from 057, an unzoomed eye vision and a zoomed eye vision. And then for comparison, 058, zoomed eye vision, which is significantly different. It's important to keep in mind that double pressing plus or minus extends to 45 degrees or 105 degrees, so the range is not so small as it might appear. It also doesn't matter what your current field of view is. Double pressing the plus key will always set it to 45 degrees. This means you can quickly switch between observing surroundings and focusing on objects, while being able to play with your preferred field of view most of the time. Jan believes this decision helps equalize players and reduce field of view slider abuse. Of course, all of those settings are open to iteration and changes if they prove to be wrong, or they just feel bad. And that's all for this status report highlight for the 30th of June, 2015. As always, I would recommend you read the status reports in full for yourselves, for the most amount of information that they hold. All links will be in the description, as well as for DayZ TV for all your latest DayZ news and information. And I'll see you peeps next time.